And welcome back to the Hot Lap. We are talking Red Bull potentially blocking Adrian Newey in relation to Aston Martin. No, Adrian Newey is still going to Aston Martin, but, yeah, and it's the but that we're going to talk about. So Adrian Newey, he issued an Aston Martin update after he's basically saying Red Bull blocked my tools. Yes. So, what does he mean by tools? Let's get into it. So, due to Red Bull blocking Adrian Newey's tools through gardening leave, plus the nature of, as we know, the 2026 regulations, it is all change. The F1 design guru says he will be behind the curve. He feels like he's starting a bit behind. Now, as you know, Newey is regarded as one of the best, the GOAT, when it comes to designing cars. And if you don't think he's the GOAT, he's definitely up there with, for example, your Barnard, Gordon Barnard, Colin Chapman's, etc. But he's the GOAT. I mean, when you look at it, successor at Williams, McLaren, Red Bull, and he has quite the CV. He's been with Red Bull for 14 of their title successes across the Drivers' and Constructors' Championship standings to date. However, he is, as we know, he's on the move. On the move to Aston Martin. And it was quite a shock Red Bull departure that was announced. Now, Newey agreed to deal with Aston Martin to take on what is the newly managing technical partner role, 66 years young, and to tempt him, they gave him shares. Now, initially, he didn't want to go to Aston Martin, rumoured, because he just thought, I'm just going to make it a better place for the Strolls to sell. Maybe they've said they're not really interested into it at all. So he's set to start his Aston Martin life on March the 2nd. That's 3 months after teams are allowed to begin work on what is these new regulations for 2026. They say 3 months, but I thought it was generally the first. So really, when you think about it, it's 2 months and 2 days, maybe. I could be wrong. But anyway, I digress. With Aston Martin taking over the use of the Honda Power Unit from Red Bull, yes, the very good Honda Power Unit, in 2026, the Silverstone squad will look to make its way towards their F1 title glory and the continuing mission to make Stroll, as in the Stroll of the Lance, relevant in Formula One circles. But in terms of Newey, he's very much battling against those odds. Now, he appeared on the Autocar podcast recently, and it was put to Newey that while he has been on a period of soft gardening leave since May, after announcing his Red Bull exit, with the RB17 hypercar basically being his final focus, he said Red Bull cannot stop him thinking of innovations that will benefit his future at Aston Martin. He replied, no, they can't, but they've blocked my tools. So obviously, Newey says, Aston wants to do the best job they can in 25, but my main focus will be on the 26 regulations. He's saying this is a big change because I start on March the 2nd. And he carried on by saying the ERA rules come out, I think, on the 1st of January, or might be the 2nd, or whatever the working day is. So he's saying he'll already be 2 months, not 3, 2 months behind that curve. But in truth, of course, it's more than that, he says, because not only will I be behind on looking at those regulations compared to when they come out, with the way the regulations have gone, you really need to be in front of a CAD. That CAD stands for Computer Aided Design. So a CAD system as well, to be able to understand all the boxes and so forth. He said, but also, it'll be getting to know a new team. So not only does he have to start designing with these new regulations, he has to get to know this new team, which are two very big things he's got to get used to. And Newey is part of a cluster of recent high-profile acquisitions by the Aston Martin team. The team will also bring in Andy Cowell, who was head of the Mercedes engine program. And Mercedes said thank you very much from 2014 onwards to Andy Cowell, because they dominated for years, didn't they? And he is their new CEO, while Enrico Cardell has joined the team from Ferrari as Aston Martin's new Chief Technical Officer. So that's going to be quite interesting. Now, he's mentioned soft gardening leave, so I imagine he's not allowed to design anything up until the 2nd of March, and that could mean, in terms of tools, he's not allowed to touch any computer. It's almost like you really aren't allowed to do this. It's just a bit weird. But what is soft gardening leave? Well, you got gardening leave, which is you're not allowed to do anything, basically. But soft gardening leave is kind of like a less restrictive form of that, surprise, surprise, gardening leave. It's a period during which an employee, usually after being resigned or given notice, he's required to stay away from work while receiving full pay and benefits. Gardening leave. But the key difference is that soft gardening leave, it allows, in this case Adrian, to engage in limited work-related activities under controlled conditions, i.e. taking his tools away rather than completely staying away from the workplace. access restrictions, for example, the employee's access to sensitive company information systems or decision-making process may be limited, so not allowed access to any of Red Bull's data, for example. Controlled communication, also interaction with clients, vendors or colleagues may be monitored or reduced, as in Adrian's communication possibly with the Aston Martin team. Partial work engagement, I don't think this is an example, but I don't think this applies, is the employee may still perform job-related duties such as attending meetings or completing specific tasks. I don't think that, because this is working. But an example would be knowledge transfer. For example, an IT executive of soft gardening leave may be asked to create documentation or train a replacement without access to ongoing strategic projects. That's just one example. Reduced hours, limited work from home, allowed to work from home remotely on specific tasks without attending the office or participating in team decisions. Could be like a soft gardening league, because as we know, he's designing the RB17 as well for the Red Bull team, which I think is quite interesting. But now I want to talk on why did Adrian Newey leave the Red Bull team? Why did he leave the Red Bull team? Well, this is a clip from the F1 for Success, Formula for Success, David Coulthard and Eddie Jordan, where Adrian Newey talks about why he didn't want to leave Red Bull, but eventually he did, which I think is quite telling now. Let's have a look, shall we?
That's a team I've been at more or less from the start. It's a team that I've been very centrally involved in developing the engineering side of the team. So it's a team I kind of feel comfortable with. We all know how we work.
Mm-hmm.
It would, I suppose, to change now. I'm not saying I would never ever change. You should never say that. But it'd be like walking out on your family. That's what it's become.
So he's saying basically that Red Bull have become a family. It's like walking out on your family. I'm not sure when this was. This is obviously before he went. This is obviously before he left. And ultimately, he did walk out on his family. Now, as we know, it's well documented, all the problems at the beginning of the year. A lot of people have theorised, is that it? Was that the reason Adrian Newey left Red Bull? I mean, when you look at the way he left Williams, for example, the way he left Williams was he had an agreement with Patrick Head and Frank Williams that he would have a say in driver contracts. And that was, I think, particular after, for example, Nigel Mansell was treated so badly, and he left. He didn't like the way Mansell was treated. And then obviously we had Alain Prost leaving, Ayrton Senna coming in, and then Jacques Villeneuve leaving. Coming in for David Coulthard, which he didn't have a say in. And then I find that potentially the straw that broke the camel's back, funny enough, was when Frentzen replaced Damon Hill, because it was in 97, after Hill won in 96, that he pretty much said, I'm done, and he eventually ended up at McLaren. Now, the interesting thing, it was at McLaren, where he has claimed before he's lost his spark. But there was very much differences between Adrian Newey and Ron Dennis. That was all because Adrian Newey had signed not a statement of intent, but not really a contract or something, in relation to going to Jaguar, I think, in the early 2000s. And then Ron Dennis convinced him, no, don't stay with McLaren. But after that, Ron Dennis never, as you'd imagine, really trusted him. And the way then McLaren designed cars was different. It was almost like by committee. There was some weird schedule of the way they designed cars, which Adrian didn't really like, and eventually went to Red Bull. Now, this is the fantastic High Performance podcast. And I'm just going to play literally like a few second clip in the hope that I don't completely get struck. This interview was this year on the 10th of September, around the time he was announced. Adrian Newey was announced for Aston Martin, but he said this is the reason why he left Red Bull, which I'm not. I'm sure there's more to it, but let's listen.
Can I explore, Adrian? You've mentioned that you went stale twice, one at McLaren and then last
one at Red Bull.
What are the signs of becoming stale?
Just you start as if you're feeling as if you're going through the motions, as if you're doing it on automatic. I think is probably the best way of putting it. You don't have those sort of wake up in the middle of the night, which can be a pain in the backside, but wake up in the middle of the night with a fresh ping of an idea or whatever. You're just not feeling stimulated. I think that's probably the easiest way of putting it.
I mean, that's quite interesting. The fact that he says he's stale, he doesn't feel stimulated. Is that because he's been at Red Bull for 14 years, he's calling family? And this is just obviously a theory, conjecture, tinfoil hats on, conspiracy theorists stand up. But is this because of, for example, the way he left McLaren is, yes, he felt stale, but then he felt stale in that environment. Was it the environment that caused him to be stale? And I think it probably was. Obviously, he's not going to air his dirty laundry out in public. This is just me guessing on why Adrian Newey may have left Red Bull. Now, when you look at the fact that he felt stale, not stimulated, maybe also in that Red Bull environment, when, let's be honest, at the beginning of the year, no way would you think Adrian Newey was going to leave. And it wasn't really, I don't believe, an offer from another big team that would have made Adrian Newey leave. Absolutely not. No, I don't think it was an offer from a big team or anything like that. What it potentially was, he felt stale and not stimulated. Was that because of the way at the beginning of the year Red Bull was with this toxic environment? You had the WhatsApp issue with Christian Horner. You had the obviously the scandal with the lady who was reportedly Christian Horner's and Adrian Newey's PA. I say reported, supposedly. Which, obviously, if that's the case, that probably would have upset Adrian Newey. And then the whole Verstappen feuds and everything. And maybe, possibly even Ford ended up wanting to know questions. There was theories that Ford might leave their backing for Red Bull, which I don't think was really going to happen. But they wanted questions. But the whole thing, let's be honest, with Verstappen out in the press, Christian Horner saying nothing, which may be what his lawyers told him to do. But the whole thing was a mess. And it must have been not particularly nice environment to work in. Adrian also supposedly behind the scenes felt like he wasn't given enough credit for his cars. And I imagine the other design team thought, well, we're also designing it. And I don't know. But I do think there's obviously a lot more than he's obviously letting on. But fair play. Fair play for him not airing his dirty laundry. It was basically just a theory that I was thinking about. So, anyway, if you made it to the end, please give us a subscribe. That would be lovely. Simply you just clicking on this video is more than enough for us here at the Hotline. But if you want to do that bit extra, hit that notification button, hit that like button, make sure you are subscribed. Speak to you soon, though, and stay safe, and thank you very much again.